So today we decided we wanted to talk about one of the most important things to know when you're starting out. So you're just out of law school, you're starting out on your own, you want to have your own practice, you want to be able to grow it and make some money. But what's one of the most important parts of that is knowing what practice area you're going to do. What is your focus going to be? And so Lucero and I are going to talk about some of the pitfalls, some of the things we've seen over the years where people have too broad of a focus or where they have too narrow of a focus. So let's hit it. What are some of the pitfalls of the focus?
Well, so what I will say is a lot of attorneys start out and they say, well, I'm going to do PI. That's going to give me great balance. I'm going to make some money. That's where I'm going to start. But even with that, within PI, there's pre-litigation, there's litigation, and those are two completely different beasts that you would be tackling. You even need to narrow at that point as well. And by specifying exactly what you're going to go into, you're going to set yourself up for marketing more effectively and creating a brand that reflects what you really, really love and are passionate about.
Totally agree. In my own practice, so what happens is as a plaintiff's attorney, you take a case, you're doing a pre-litigation, you're sending letters, and then at some point you decide to file it. It changes the nature of the case all of a sudden. Maybe you were close to settlement prior, now you filed it. It now changes the dynamic, and you're getting motion work, and you're going down that route, and so it almost delays it. It changes it. It changes your focus, and so if you've got all these cases at different stages, it changes the ebb and flow of the natural cash in the business, and so it is, at least from what I've seen, much better if you have employees and a department that focuses on the pre-lit, and then you separate that out, and then you have somebody focusing on the litigation, because it is one of those areas where you can do pre-lit really well and not litigation really well, or you can do litigation really well and not pre-lit, and both of them affect the ebb and flow of the finances in the law firm, how long you can go taking the case. So I think that's absolutely true from what I've seen. It's very important to focus. And one more thing I would say on that is, if you're just starting out, it would be very, very wise to focus on the pre-lit, bring in experienced counsel on the litigation aspect of it. You can learn alongside of them as co-counsel in how to successfully litigate a case, while not having to have all of that experience all the way through a trial, for example. And so if you don't have that experience, definitely offload it, and there's lots of ways to offload it, and that's one of them. Bring in experienced co-counsel. I know lots of firms that will just take the whole case over at that point. You can keep focusing and honing your skills on how to find a case and how to work it up to that stage of either settlement or putting it into litigation.
Did anyone's heart start racing when they heard Jake talk about all the possibilities if you don't narrow your focus? Okay, because I'm sitting here and I was, and it is very important, but not only for you, for peace of mind and clarity as you're building your business, but also you're going to need help. You're going to have to hire employees. This is something I have a lot of experience with in a law firm. And so if you don't know exactly what you're focused on, then you don't know who your next hires need to be. In addition to focusing what your practice area will be, you also need to focus what kind of attorney or managing attorney or just overseeing from a distance attorney do you want to be. That's going to help you dictate your hires in terms of building out your organization. So are you an attorney who wants to be heavily involved? Your first hire might be someone who's supporting you, someone who's a paralegal. We might have a difference of opinion on this, so Jake will weigh in. But if you're an attorney who wants to be involved in your cases and in negotiating, your first hire is going to be someone who supports you and allows you to stay connected in those higher level pieces that only an attorney can do. If you're an attorney who loves to market, you love to grow your business, you love to network, you want to be out there meeting people and growing your organization, and that's your focus, then your first hire might be an attorney who can take over the attorney-specific responsibilities, maybe someone who's junior right out of law school that you can grow into a higher role over the years. And they'll fill some of that paralegal work initially. And as they do that, they'll also be able to train that paralegal when you bring them on. So when we talk about narrowing the focus, Jake is actually just spot on with, you need to focus first what your practice area will be, and then also as you're deciding what kind of attorney and what kind of leader you're going to be in your organization, so you can start building out your team.
Yeah, no, I think those are spot on. One other point I'd make on employees, when you have, and this is a trap when it comes to focus. So you see another type of claim and you're like, oh, well, I've been doing PI cases, but here's an employment case. Maybe I want to do employment cases. And so you start dabbling in employment cases. The problem is, when you're broadening your focus like that, is you might not do employment very well. You're now competing against other people that's all they do are employment cases. But when it comes to employees, like Lucero was saying, you now have employees who are having to learn how to do employment cases, right? And so it makes you less efficient as an organization to expand your focus. If there really is a great market for employment cases, I think the goal should be develop another division, roll it off, another firm, what have you, but keep the focus, because when you can take an employee on one little subset, whether it's pre-lit and lit, or if you're going even bigger than that and say employment, PI, if they're just doing employment cases, you can train them so their expertise is there a lot quicker. And when people really understand the subject matter, they can do a better job. You're helping your clients. You're more successful. You're able to get the case resolved quicker, maybe for a lot better outcome for your clients. And so the focus really is important, and to not broaden it. But it took me a long time to learn that. I mean, I always kind of did employment cases, but every time I saw, oh, this is kind of an interesting area, and you start broadening out into this one or this one, and your employees are going along with you because now they're having to learn it, and they're having to be retrained. And so it's hard to turn it into a business rather than just a solo practitioner who's dabbling in business law and employment law and PI. And so it spreads it out. You don't develop the expertise. The employees certainly don't. In contrast, you have employees who understand how to find this specific case really well. You can find employment cases, you spot them better, you know the issues better, and so start to finish, you're a lot more efficient. And so I think that's, with employees and focus, that's another really important benefit to having a good, solid focus.
I love analogies, and I think of it this way. If I'm a tuna fisherman, right? Like, I want to be the best tuna fisherman in the world. Do you love this? And I go out and I'm fishing for tuna, but I've got a bunch of shrimp that I caught too. I've got tuna and I've got shrimp, right? And I'm like, I'm going to bring it all in. Well, I'm not going to be the best tuna fisherman, but I'm also not going to be the best shrimp fisherman, right? So you need to focus, and then you just need to drive that piece. And you're 100% right. Employees want to feel like they're good at something. They want to feel like they're great at something. Right now, employees are struggling with two things at work. They're unhappy with their pay, and they're unhappy with growth opportunities. Well, both of those things come from being really good at something, becoming an expert, and they can also create and see that growth within that role. Now, if you've got them spread too thin, they're not going to be the best at catching tuna, and they're not going to be the best at catching shrimp. So you also have to allow them to succeed. One thing that I have heard from attorneys before is, listen, I do PI and I've got these pre-lit cases. This is a great question for you. And I've given my cases that need to go on to litigation to other firms, but I just don't like how they handle it. Like, I'm taking such good care of my client at the pre-lit piece. I hand it over and I feel like the case isn't going to be taken care of. So that just tells me I have to do both. But again, what we're talking about is you really need to narrow. You need to get good at one before you attack both. So then what do? You just keep finding a new lit partner? What would you say would be your...
I mean, it depends on the situation. I think if you find that you're better at litigation than somebody else that you're handing off your case to, then you should definitely be keeping the case, right? And you should be doing, but I think ideally you're separating that out so that the employees that are working on your litigation cases and get really good at discovery and motion practice and pushing a litigation case probably aren't the same employees that you're training up in pre-lit. Now maybe one moves on to litigation, but if you're really good at handling the litigation, you can do that within the same firm for sure. But I think if you're just starting out and you're just by yourself, it's harder to do that, I guess is what I would say. And so, the more things you're stacking on it, the harder it is to be good at each one of those things. And so it's dividing your attention. And if you're trying to start your firm and then grow it to the next level, you need somebody in all those different areas doing it and learning it and growing in that area, and so that you can grow the firm and be successful at it rather than trying to be okay at lots of different areas. And it's hard, and it, like I said earlier on cash management, I think it goes back to that. Cases are a different speed in pre-lit than the cases that you have to litigate, and so it's a different tempo, cash flows a lot differently, and so they're two different businesses completely. And when they're merged together, it can stymie growth if you're not looking at it from a business perspective. And I think many attorneys don't, and that it was really hard for me to learn that aspect of it and learn how that affects the business side of it. And so you end up being a solo practitioner for a long time without getting it to the next step where you're able to offload everything that your business does to somebody else, and so you're a true CEO or owner rather than an employee doing it day to day. And I think the more you can compartmentalize the things and get really good at each individual aspect of it, the better. And I think one final part on this discussion, I'd say, is what areas should you pick? So if you're just starting out, is there an area of law you should go into? What's the better area of law? And I have my thoughts on a few considerations, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Just to throw it out there, I think, stuff you're passionate at. If you've got a passion for a certain area, for me, less passion and more, logistically, if it's a marketable area of law, right? I think that aspect should play into it. But what are your thoughts on it as far as what areas should somebody pick? Should they all go into PI law? Could be a personal injury attorney?
I mean, I would weigh two things. For me, passion is obvious. So if I have some tie to a certain aspect of legal practice, then I would definitely want to consider that. But also, I'm guessing you're going into starting your own business because you want to be really successful. So I would consider the trends that you see and what kind of laws do you think would see passing, or what kind of pressures do you see the government putting on legislature? I would look at those things because passion is really important. But also there are trends that are affecting the legal practice. So I think you'd play into to look at both of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any business, you want to find an area where you can add some benefit. And so if you're not better than what is already out there, then why does anybody need to come to you? And so if you can find an area where you're able to find some efficiency, you're able to do the case faster, more efficiently. Maybe it's because you have a skill with talking to the clients and developing those relationships. Maybe you should go and develop relationships with business owners or what have you, and go into that side of it. Or maybe you see a niche where a new law comes out and there's some formula you have to go to, setting up a new corporation, for example. And so you know how to do that quickly, and so you can kind of do that and only that and scale it or whatever. I think there's tons of different areas you can go into and make a very successful practice. I've seen laws that are amazing, and I think they took something that they can add some value to and scaled it, and they usually had a narrow enough focus that they could be an expert on it, or other people are just dabbling in it. And that might be changing laws, like you're saying, or an untapped area. There's some need. When I came out of law school in 2009, there was an explosion of disability type claims in employment, and so a lot of people were getting fired and laying off after that recession, and so people were filing for disability and they were seeking out employment attorneys. And so I went into employment law, and it was a natural, there was a need for it, and it just ballooned. I remember at the time, I think it was something like 1 million filings a year, and it went to 3 million in a year period. So you just, overnight, the market tripled for somebody who could understand disability laws in that regard. And so I learned disability discrimination and all of those. And so that was a tide. I've seen that. I've seen other people who jump on bankruptcy when there's all of a sudden bankruptcy filings and the like. But I think if you can add value and you're efficient, that's all that really matters. The area of law doesn't matter as much as long as there's that need for it and you're the best at it. People will gravitate to you.
Yeah. Well, we hope this was helpful, got you thinking about some laws of practice, building your own business. And we love questions. If we can go into anything else more specifically for you, please let us know.
Yeah, reach out. We'd love to see your thoughts on what we said and which area poked some holes in it. Anyway, it's been great.